schooner.
Schooner. Schooner. Arr, schooner. Be still me beating heart. The winch of the sea shows up.
Yes.
What's
yes.
going on,
What a
everybody?
day.
What's up?
So, you know, I was going to do a stream earlier today, and man, I'll be damned if I just wasn't too exhausted. My brain wouldn't function.
Same.
Yeah.
I
It's been a busy week.
Yeah.
It's been a busy week.
Yeah, I'm ready to get back to normal.
Spent a lot of energy laughing at all the lefty loons out there whining and crying and soaking up all their salt. That takes a lot of energy.
I decided to shave my head, and I'm not going to sleep with men. So.
Oh well.
Me too. I did
Hey,
mine.
it's a
before
win-win.
I'm feeling pretty good. Ain't that
Oh,
be
thank goodness.
I know. I'm sure Diva doesn't have a problem with that at all.
No.
Oh, good. It's been confirmed.
What were you doing while you were traveling for work? What was happening? I don't know now.
Like all of them would decide to do that. Nobody was sleeping with you anyway. Stop. Stop.
Oh, the people that were doing yeah.
Oh yeah. Like nobody was sleeping with you anyway. Stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it gives them an excuse to voice it as to why people aren't sleeping with them to begin with. It's just like, I knew there was a bunch of lefty loons out there, but I was like, Jesus, there's a lot of fucking clown college failures out here. A lot more than what I thought.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I've got like the salt just keeps flowing because and it's going to happen all the way up until 4 more years. Stop flowing.
Yeah.
It's like we'll have enough to keep snow off the streets in Georgia for all of eternity. We keep this up.
Yeah.
Because the devil went down to Georgia.
Well, I thought I saw.
Well, and that's the
something-
funny. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I saw something where Germany's government's going to collapse because Trump was elected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. They keep saying stupid shit like that all the time. Hello, he was already in office once. Now, of course, a lot of people may not remember because it was all about Russia collusion and all the other bullshit that was spinning at the vast majority of the time. But hello, we didn't fucking fall apart the first time. As a matter of fact, our economy was great.
It's funny how
And then the
that
Biden regime took over, and then it went to shit.
Yeah, it was amazing that we were able to refinance our house like right before the election.
Exactly.
right.
It was at a low 2 point something percent.
Yeah.
What is it, like 7% now? Something like that.
Yeah. It's a little over 7.
Like, fuck.
Yeah. It's like 1980s rates. Not quite 80s rates, but
No, not quite 80s rates. Definitely not 70s rates. 70s was like
it's still worse than it was under Clinton.
Yeah.
The rates under Clinton were better than this.
yeah.
yeah. But hey,
Thanks to a Republican Congress.
yeah, exactly. Well, we'll have enough salt for 4 years, I guarantee. So it'll happen. It's a beautiful
Salty
thing.
tears.
Makes me just not want to have sex with men anymore.
I know.
God. Ew.
I'm just not going to have sex with men. I'm going to shave my head. Well, they weren't having sex with you anyway. Shut up.
Yeah.
Well, of course, but that's beside the point.
I don't know why it's all men's faults too. Why is it all why men?
Well, men and all you white women's.
Well, what they're doing is they're pulling up these demographics and saying, oh, all these people voted for Trump and blah, 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 and didn't vote for Kamala. It's like the majority of America as a whole didn't want to.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Okay.
Move on.
Yeah, they had enough of that fucking Democrat lefty fucking bullshit this time.
Yeah.
Technically, I made a
Ew.
did leave off on Animal Farm, and I figure we could probably finish it off tonight.
Yeah, why not?
It's pretty easy.
I'm glad he blew that up. That way I could read it.
Oh, Lord.
Before the print that's so small.
Let me close this over here so that way I can get it bigger. There we go. Is that big enough for you?
That's good and big right there.
You like good and big. That's right. That's right. We just whipped that certain thing out.
Yeah.
Show you exactly what it's all about.
It's kind of a twisty font, though. I don't know about.
Doggone it. That's not what I wanted to do. There it is. So that way, whenever Kaiser comes in, I can move him right above Yamaha. So we have boy, girl, boy, girl, boy.
Poor Kaiser. One day.
One of these days.
One of these days.
Right to the moon. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So where we left off is the ass said, yeah, windmill or no windmill. Life will go on as it always has gone on. That is badly. That is what he had to say about that. He was just like, it's gone bad so far. It's just going to continue to go bad. Well, apart from the disputes over the windmill, there was the question of the defense of the farm. It was fully realized that though the human beings had been defeated in the battle of the cow shed, they might make another and more determined attempt to recapture the farm and reinstate Mr. Jones. They had all the more reason for doing so because the news of their defeat had spread across the countryside and made the animals on the neighboring farms more restive than ever. As usual, Snowball and Napoleon were in disagreement. According to Napoleon, what the animals must do was procure firearms, train themselves in the use of them. And according to Snowball, they must send out more and more pigeons to stir up the rebellion among the animals on the other farms. The one argued that if they could not defend themselves, they were bound to be conquered. The other argued that if rebellions happened everywhere, they would have no need to defend themselves. The animals listened first to Napoleon, then to Snowball. Could not make up their minds, which was right. Indeed, they always found themselves in agreement with the one who was speaking at the moment, because they're like a bunch of chickens. They just have their heads bobbing up and down, or turkeys where they're just... At last, the day came.
The cock gobbler.
Oh, yes.
Gobbler.
Last the day came when Snowball's plans were completed at the meeting on the following Sunday. Why do they have to have meetings on Sunday? Sound like a bunch of Christians or something. The question of whether or not to begin work on the windmill was to be put up to the vote. When the animals had assembled in the big barn, Snowball stood up and, though occasionally interrupted by bleeding from the sheet, set forth his reasons for advocating the building of the windmill. Then Napoleon stood up in reply. He said very quietly that the windmill was nonsense and that he advised nobody to vote for it, and promptly sat down again. He had spoken for barely 30 seconds, and it seemed almost indifferent as to the effect he produced. At this, Snowball sprang to his feet and, shouting down the sheep who had begun bleeding again, broke into a passionate appeal in favor of the windmill. Until now, the animals had been equally divided in their sympathies. But in a moment, Snowball's eloquence had carried them away. In glowing sentences, he painted a picture of Animal Farm, as it might be when sordid labor was lifted from the animals' backs. His imagination had now run far beyond chaff cutters and turnip slicers. Electricity, he said, could operate threshing machines, plows, harrows, rollers, and reapers and binders. Besides supplying every stall with its own electric light, hot and cold, water, and an electric heater. Ooh, who doesn't like an electric heater? Especially take the heat, the chill off the nibs. By the time he had finished speaking, there was no doubt as to which way the vote would go. But just as this moment, Napoleon stood up and, casting a particular sidelong look at Snowball, uttered a high-pitched whimper of a kind no one had ever heard him utter before. And there was a terrible baying sound outside, and 9 enormous dogs wearing brass-studded collars came bounding into the barn. They dashed straight for Snowball, who only sprang from place just in time to escape their snapping jaws. In a moment, he was out the door, and they were after him. Too amazed and frightened to speak, all the animals crowded through the door to watch the chase. Snowball was racing across the long pasture that led to the road like a hog being chased by a pack of wild dogs. He was running as only a pig could run, but the dogs were close on his heels. Suddenly he slipped, and it seemed certain that they had him. Then he was up again, running faster than ever. Then the dogs were gaining on him again. One of them all but closed his jaws on Snowball's tail, but Snowball whisked it free just in time, then put on an extra spurt all over his face. And with a few inches to more inches, slipped through a hole. Oh, God, inches and spurts and slipping through holes. Oh, a few inches.
It's all over my face. Oh!
I swear you need to read in that voice. Just once.
I don't know if I could do that. I think that would
That would
hurt.
be hard.
Just tuck it up there real tight.
Oh,
I
my
think you can do it.
I have to break out the vice grips. Clamp down a little.
Turning me on. Damn it. No, my heart's beating crazy. Silent and terrified, the animals crept back into the barn. In a moment, the dogs came bounding back. At first, no one had been able to imagine where these creatures came from, but the problem was soon solved. They were the puppies whom Napoleon had taken away from their mothers and reared privately. Though not yet fully grown, they were huge dogs and as fierce looking as wolves. They kept close to Napoleon. It was noticed that they wagged their tails to him in the same way as other dogs had been used to do to Mr. Jones.
Oh.
Napoleon, with those dogs following him, now mounted onto the raised portion of the floor where Major had previously stood to deliver his speech. He announced that from now on the Sunday morning meetings would come to an end, as they were unnecessary, he said, and wasted time. In future, all questions related to the working of the farm would be settled by a special committee of pigs, presided over by himself. These would meet in private and afterwards communicate their decisions to the others. The animals would still assemble on Sunday mornings to salute the flag, sing the beasts of England, and receive their orders for the week. But there would be no more debates. In spite of the shock that Snowball's expulsion had given them, the animals were dismayed by this announcement. Several of them would have protested if they could have found the right arguments. Even Boxer was vaguely troubled. He set his ears back and shook his forelock several times. Hey, sometimes you just got to shake that forelock. And tried harsh to marshal his thoughts, but in the end, he could not think of anything to say. Some of them pigs themselves, however, were more articulate. 4 young burghers in the front row uttered shrill squeals of disapproval, and all 4 of them sprang to their feet and began speaking at once. But suddenly the dogs sitting around Napoleon let out a deep, menacing growls. The pigs fell silent, sat down again. Then the sheep broke out into tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which went on for nearly a quarter of an hour and put an end to any chance of discussion. Afterwards, Squealer was sent round the farm to explain the new arrangements to the others. Comrades, he said, I trust that every anyone here appreciates the sacrifice that Comrade Napoleon has made in taking his extra labor upon himself. Now, do not imagine, comrades, that the leadership is a pleasure. On the contrary, it is very deep and heavy responsibility. No one believes more firmly than Comrade Napoleon that all animals are equal. He would be only too happy to let you make your decisions for yourselves. But sometimes you might make the wrong decisions. Comrades, then there you be. Then where should you be? Suppose you had decided to follow Snowball with this moonshine of windmills. Snowball, who, as we know, is no better than a criminal. He fought bravely at the Battle of Cowshed, said somebody. Bravery is not enough, said Squealer. Loyalty and obedience are more important. And as to the Battle of the Cowshed, I believe that the time will come when we shall find Snowball's part was as much exaggerated. Discipline, comrades. I ain't disciplined. That is the watchword for today. One false step and our enemies should be upon us. Surely, comrades, you do not want Jones back. Once again, the question was unanswerable. Certainly the animals did not want Jones back. If the holding of debates on Sunday mornings was liable to bring him back, then the debates must stop. Boxer, who had now had time to think things over, voiced a general feeling by saying, "Your comrade Napoleon says it must be right." And from then on, he adopted the maxim, "Napoleon is always right," in addition to his private motto of, "I will work harder." All right, I'm going to pass that on to Diva now.
Poor Boxer.
Poor Boxer. Hey, Gutter Girl. How you doing?
Sweet. By this time, the weather had broken and the spring ploughing had begun. The shed where Snowball had drawn his plans at the windmill had been shut up, and it was assumed that the plans had been rubbed off the floor. Every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, the animals assembled in the big barn to receive their orders for the week. The skull of Old Major, now clean of flesh, had been disinterred from the orchard and set on a stump at the foot of the flagstaff beside the gun. After the hoisting of the flag, the animals were required to file past the skull in a reverent manner before entering the barn. Nowadays, they did not sit all together as they had done in the past. Napoleon, with Squealer and another pig named Minimus, who had a remarkable gift for having very tiny bacon, composing songs and poems, sat on the front of the raised platform, with the 9 young dogs forming a semicircle round them, and the other pigs sitting behind. The rest of the animals sat facing them in the main body of the barn. Napoleon read out the orders for the week in a gruff, soldierly style, and after a single singing of Beast of England, all the animals dispersed. On the 3rd Sunday after Snowball's expulsion, the animals were somewhat surprised to hear Napoleon announce that the windmill was to be built after all. He did not give any reason for having changed his mind, but merely warned the animals that this extra task would mean very hard work, and it might even be necessary to reduce their rations. Oh, jeez. The plans, however, had all been prepared, down to the last detail. A special committee of pigs had been at work upon them over the past 3 weeks. The building of the windmill, with the various other improvements, was expected to take 2 years, but now, since this is a pig government, it's going to take 10. That evening,
Lines, go figure.
Squealer explained privately to the other animals that Napoleon had never, in reality, been opposed to the windmill. On the contrary, it was he who had advocated for it from the beginning, and the plan which Snowball had drawn on the floor of the incubator shed had actually been stolen from Napoleon's papers. The windmill was, in fact, Napoleon's own creation. Why, then, had he spoken so strongly against it? Here, Squealer looked very shy. That, he said, was Comrade Napoleon's cunning. He had seemed to oppose the windmill simply as a maneuver to get rid of the Snowball, who was a dangerous character and a bad influence. Now that Snowball was out of the way, the plan could go forward without his interference. This, said Squealer, was something called tactics. He repeated a number of times, "Tactics, comrade, tactics," skipping around and whisking his tail with a merry laugh. The animals were not certain what the word meant, but Squealer spoke so persuasively, and the 3 dogs who happened to be with him growled so threateningly, that they accepted this explanation without further questions.
Welcome, Kaiser.
Was
I thought I was my lord in bad decisions.
Oh, this weekend's been full of bad decisions.
Yes.
That's partly why the camera's off.
Same.
Oh.
I got you.
Oh. Were you in another pride parade and forgot to you used the magic marker again, didn't you?
Didn't you hear Trump canceled all the pride parades?
No, mostly it's just I'm exhausted. I've been basically slamming beers for a couple of minutes now, just because I'm like, I am just freaking done with today. Been having to watch the kid all weekend by myself.
Oh.
And just got him in bed, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for some laughs, some fun, relaxation.
Daddy needs a beer.
Daddy.
Speaking of laughs and fun, so I'm going to go grab myself a beer. If you guys can converse amongst
That's a
yourselves.
good idea. I
Some,
think it's-
yeah,
Oh,
Paulaner Doppelbock.
There you go.
There you go.
very nice.
Made some beer battered catfish for me and the kid for dinner
Oh,
tonight with that.
yum.
God, but that was good.
We haven't done catfish in forever,
I know
Volstorm.
it. I haven't tried beer battered catfish before.
You know, I was like, beer batter, they do that a lot with like tilapia,
Yeah.
cod, like, other kinds of whitefish. I'm like, well, catfish probably do the same. So I actually was on sale at the fish market over by us, and they had wild caught catfish too, and they were huge. So got me one of those. It was like $3.99 a pound.
Oh, shoot.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah, just stocked up on that. Ended up putting some in the freezer, and oh yeah, that beer batter. It was just this beer right here, just all-purpose flour, black pepper, little paprika, and some baking powder. That was it. Done deal.
Nice.
Fried it up 350 degrees, and boy, that thing is so crunchy and just perfect.
Sounds good. Now I want some.
No fishy taste at all. It was amazing.
Hmm.
Of course, I love catfish anyway. So
Yeah.
hell yeah.
All I heard was it didn't have a fishy taste,
It's-
but
yeah,
I didn't
it's-
mind.
That,
What were you
most
talking
important.
about?
That's most important.
But as long as you cut out the bad part of the belly, you're all right.
yeah, I already had done that, and I mean, they had catfish belly there, but I didn't get that. I just got the actual fillet.
Ew.
Sweet.
Volstorm, I'm going to let you read.
Why are you making me read? Jeez.
Cause it's your turn. Your turn.
All that year, the animals worked like slaves, but they were happy in their work. They grudged no effort or sacrifice, well aware that they had done that. What, dear Lord, how did the sentence structure has gone all screwy on me. Well aware that everything that they did was for the benefit of themselves and those of their kind who would come after them, and not for a pack of idle, thieving human beings. Throughout the spring and summer, they worked a 60-hour week. Dear Lord. They must own their own business. And in August, Napoleon announced that there would be work on Sunday afternoons as well. This work was strictly voluntary. That's what I tell the ones in the basement do. But any animal who absent themselves from it would have his rations cut in half. Dear Lord. Even so, it was found necessary to leave certain tasks undone. The harvest was a little less successful than the previous year, and the 2 fields which had been sown with roots in early summer weren't sown because they're lazy. Because the plowing had not been completed early enough, it was possible to foresee that the coming winter would be a hard one.
Always hard.
It's the winter is always hard if you do not have someone to cuddle up next to.
Emergency food ration.
You got plenty of bacon there.
That's right. Worst comes to worst. There's always bacon.
Bacon is so good.
Bacon.
Bacon. The windmill presented unexpected difficulties. There was a good quarry of limestone on the farm. Plenty of sand and cement had been found in one of the outhouses. You might want to leave that alone if it was in the outhouse. So that all the materials for building were on hand. But the problem the animals could not solve was how to break up the stone into pieces of suitable size. There seemed no way of doing this except with picks and crowbars, which the animals couldn't use because they don't have thumbs. No animal could stand on its hind legs. Only after weeks of vain effort did the right idea occur, namely to utilize the force of gravity. Huge boulders, far too big to be used as they were lying all over the bed of the quarry. The animals lashed ropes around them, and then all together, cows, horses, sheep, and any animal that could lay hold of the rope. Even the pigs sometimes joined in at critical moments, probably at the end so they could take credit. Dragged them with desperate slowness up the slope to the top of the quarry, where they toppled over the edge and shattered into pieces. How long did it take you to figure this out? Transporting the stone when it was once broken was comparatively simple. The horses carried it off on the carts, the sheep dragged single blocks. Even Muriel and Benjamin yoked themselves to an old governess cart and did their share. By late summer, a sufficient store of stone had been accumulated, and then the building began under the superintendence of the pigs.
Oh, that's always the pigs.
But dear Lord, it takes so damn long to do this crap. Frequently, it took a whole day of exhausting effort on the behalf of everybody else but the damn pigs who just sit there and do nothing. To be able to drag a single boulder to the top of the quarry, and sometimes when it was pushed over the edge, it did not break. Nothing could be achieved without Boxer. There's a thought. Whose strength seemed to equal that of all of the rest of the animals put together. When the boulder began to slip and the animals cried out in despair at finding themselves dragged down the hill, it was always Boxer who strained himself against the rope and brought the boulder to a stop. To see him toiling up the slope inch by inch, his breath coming fast, the tips of his hooves, just the tip, clawing at the ground, and his great sides matted with sweat, filled everyone with admiration. Yes, the look of a person dying fills you with admiration. Dear Lord,
look at all the muscles.
Look at how sweaty he is.
You know, I feel like I'm working my ass off over here for all of y'all. I ain't getting shit.
ain't y'all doing a damn thing? Talk to me about half rations and shit. Clover warned him sometimes to be careful not to overstrain himself, but Boxer would never listen to her. His two slogans, "I will work harder" and "Napoleon is always right," seemed to him to be a sufficient answer to all problems. Interesting. He had made arrangements with the cockerel to call him 3/4 of an hour earlier in the mornings instead of a half hour, and in his spare moments, of which Shizzy would forget to move the page. There were not many nowadays. He would go alone to the quarry, collect a load of broken stone, and drag it down to the site of the windmill unassisted. The animals were not badly off throughout that summer. In spite of the hardness of their work, they had no more food than they had in Jones's day. At least they did not have less. The advantage of only having to feed themselves and not having to support 5 extravagant human beings as well was so great that it would have taken a lot of failures to outweigh it. And in many ways, the animal method of doing things was more efficient and saved labor. Yes, because you have one horse doing everything.
Yes.
Such jobs as weeding, for instance, could be done with a thoroughness impossible to human beings. And again, since no animal now stole, it was unnecessarily to fence off pasture from arable land, which saved a lot of labor, the upkeep of hedges and gates. Dear Lord, this is boring. Nevertheless, as the summer wore on, various unforeseen shortages began to make themselves felt. There was a need of paraffin oil, nails, string, dog biscuits, and iron for the horses' shoes, none of which could be produced on the farm. No shit. Later, there would also be a need for seeds and artificial manure. Why do you need artificial manure? You have horses and goats.
Yeah, real shit.
And pigs.
Got some real shit here.
Horses, pigs, cows, goats.
Horses, pigs, cows. You don't need artificial manure. Jesus.
Man,
Besides
pigs are
various
good.
tools and finally the machinery for the windmill, how are they supposed to be procured? No one was able to imagine.
Well, because they don't have any imagination. Obvious.
Once
Don't have thumbs.
don't have thumbs. One
No,
Sunday
thumbs
morning,
fancy.
when the animals assembled to receive their orders, Napoleon announced that he had decided on a new policy. From now on, Animal Farm would engage in trade with neighboring farms, not of course for any commercial purpose, but simply in order to obtain certain materials that were urgently necessary. The needs of the windmill must override everything else, he said. He was therefore making arrangements to sell a stack of hay and parts of the current year's wheat crop. And later on, if money was needed, it would have to be made up from the sale of eggs, which there
Sell
was
some eggs.
always a market in Willingdon. The hens, said Napoleon, should welcome the sacrifice as part of their own special contribution toward the building of the windmill.
Facial.
Sounds like a typical city project in certain towns.
Yeah, Seattle. I think they tried this, didn't they?
Seattle,
They tried-
Baltimore, San Francisco, take your pick.
Take your
What
pick.
was this the one where they tried to throw a bunch of dirt onto a tarp and call it a garden?
Probably.
Yes. It's the funniest thing I ever saw.
We're going to
know,
clean up the homeless by giving them fresh needles. And we're going to charge 10 times the price so we can pocket the profits.
Exactly.
I digress. Once again, the animals were conscious of a vague uneasiness, never to have any dealings with human beings, never to engage in trade, never to make use of money. Had not these been among the earliest resolutions passed at the first triumphant meeting after Jones was expelled? All the animals remembered passing these resolutions, or at least they thought they remembered it. The 4 young pigs who had protested when Napoleon abolished the meetings raised their voices timidly, but they were promptly silenced by a tremendous growling from the dogs. Then, as usual, the sheep broke into 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and the momentary awkwardness was over. Finally, Napoleon raised his trotter for silence and announced that he had already made the arrangements. There would be no need for any of the animals to come in contact with the humans, which would clearly be most undesirable. He intended to take the whole burden on his shoulders. A Mr. Whymper, a solicitor living in Willingdon, had agreed to act as intermediary between Animal Farm and the outside world. union leader, and would visit the farm every Monday morning to receive his instructions. Napoleon ended the speech with his usual cry of, "Long live Animal Farm." And after the singing of Beasts of Burden, the animals were dismissed. All right, Kaiser.
Okay. Afterwards, Squealer made a round of the farm and set the animals' minds at rest. He assured them that the resolution against engaging in trade and using money had never been passed, nor even suggested. It was pure imagination, probably traceable in the beginning to lies circulated by Snowball. A few animals still felt faintly doubtful, but Squealer asked them shrewdly, "Are you certain that this is not something that you have dreamed, comrades? Have you any record of such a resolution? Is it written down somewhere?" And since it was certainly true, and nothing of this kind existed in writing, the animals were satisfied that they had been mistaken.
Shere Khan. I'm trying to go for a bit more of Winston Churchill, but it's kind of in between.
I like it.
No, that one works good.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good.
Every Monday, Mr. Wimper visited the farm as had been arranged. He was a sly-looking little man with side whiskers and solicitor in a very small way of business, but sharp enough to have realized earlier that anyone else at Animal Farm would need a broker and that the commissions would be worth having. The animals watched his coming and going with all kind of dread and avoided him as much as possible. Nevertheless, the sight of Napoleon on all fours delivering orders to Wimper, who stood on two legs, roused their pride and partly reconciled them with a new arrangement. Their relations with the human race were now quite the same as they had been before. The human beings did not hate Animal Farm any less than it was prospering. Indeed, they hated it more than ever. Every human being held it as an article of faith that the farm would go bankrupt sooner or later, and above all, that the windmill would be a failure. They would meet in the public houses and prove to one another by any means of diagrams that the windmill was bound to fall down, or that if it did stand up, then that it would never work. And yet, against their will, they had developed a certain respect for the efficiency with which the animals were managing their own affairs. One symptom of this was that they had begun to call Animal Farm by its proper name and ceased to pretend that it was called the Manor Farm. They had also dropped their championship of Jones, who had given up on hope for getting his farm back and gone to live with another part of the country. Except through Wimper, there was yet no contact between Animal Farm and the outside world. But there was constant rumors that Napoleon was about to enter a definite business arrangement with either Mr. Pilkington of Foxwood or Mr. Frederick of Pinchfield, but never, it was noticed, with both simultaneously. Sip of beer. Yummy. It was about this time that the pigs suddenly moved into the farmhouse and took up residence there. Again, the animals seemed to remember that a resolution against this had been passed in the early days, and again Squealer was able to convince them that this was not the case. It was absolutely necessary, he said, that the pigs, who were the brains of the farm, should have a quiet place to work in. It was also more suited to the dignity of the leader, for of late he had taken to speaking Napoleon under the title of leader. In the house, or like to live in the house more than in a mere sigh. Nevertheless, some of the animals were disturbed when they heard that the pigs not only took their meals in the kitchen and used the drawing room as a recreation room, but they slept in the beds. Boxer passed it off as usual with Napoleon is always right. But Clover, who thought she remembered a definite ruling against beds, went to the end of the barn and tried to puzzle out the 7 commandments which were inscribed there, finding herself unable to read more than individual letters. She fetched Muriel. Muriel, she said, read me the 4th commandment. Does it not say something about never sleeping in a bed? With some difficulty, Muriel spelled it out. It says, no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets, she announced finally. Curiously enough, Clover had not remembered that the 4th commandment mentioned sheets, but as it was there on the wall, it must have done so, and Squealer, who happened to be passing by at this moment, attended by 2 or 3 dogs, was able to put the whole matter in its proper perspective. Have you heard then, comrades, he said, that we pigs now sleep in the beds of the farmhouse, and why not? You did not suppose, surely, that there was ever a ruling against beds? A bed merely means a place to sleep in. A pile of straw and a stall is a bed, properly regarded. The rule was against sheets, which are a human invention. We have removed the sheets from the farmhouse beds and sleep between blankets, and very comfortable beds they are too. But not more comfortable than we need. I can tell you, comrades, with all the brain work we have to do nowadays, you would not rob us of our repose, would you, comrades? You would not have us too tired to carry out our duties. Surely none of you wishes to see Jones back. The animals reassured him on the point immediately, and no more was said about the pigs sleeping in the farmhouse beds. And when, some days afterward, it was announced that from now on the pigs would get up an hour later in the mornings than the other animals, no complaint was made about it either. By the autumn, the animals were tired but happy. They had had a hard year. Really hard, if you know what I mean. It gets really hard around this part, yeah. Shut up, Elmo and Golem. Get down. You're not the boss of me, old man. Shut up. Anyway, continuing on. By the see where yes. It was almost they had hard year in the after the sale of part of the hay and corn. The stores of food in the winter were none too plentiful, but the windmill compensated for everything. It was almost half built now. After the harvest, there was a stretch of clear, dry weather. The animals toiled harder than ever, thinking it was well worthwhile to plod to and fro all day with blocks of stone. It was by doing so that they could raise the walls another foot. Boxer, who had even come out at night and worked for an hour or two on his own by the light of the harvest moon, in their spare strength and perpendicularity of its walls, and marveling that they should never have been able to do anything so imposing. Only old Benjamin refused to grow enthusiastic about the windmill, though, as usual, he would utter nothing beyond the cryptic remark that donkeys live a long time. Would you like to go ahead and continue on? I have a story.
All righty then.
My voice is getting tired from sounding like a smoke 3-pack.
Sounding like you're smoking a bunch of Marlboros over there.
Yeah, getting down and dirty.
November came with raging southwest winds. Building had to stop because it was now too wet to mix the cement. Finally, There came a night when the gale was so violent that the farm buildings rocked on their foundations and several tiles were blown off the roof of the barn. The hens woke up squawking with terror because they had all dreamed simultaneously of hearing a gun go off in the distance. In the morning, the animals came out of their stalls to find that the flagstaff had been blown down and an elm tree at the foot of the orchard had been plucked up like a radish. They had just noticed this when a cry of despair broke from every animal's throat. A terrible sight had met their eyes. The windmill was in ruins. With one accord, they dashed down to the spot. Napoleon, who seldom moved out of a walk, raced ahead of them all. Yes, there it lay, the fruit of all their struggles, leveled to its foundations, the stones they had broken and carried so laboriously, scattered all around. Unable at first to speak, they stood gazing mournfully at the litter of fallen stone. Napoleon paced to and fro in silence, occasionally snuffing at the ground. His tail had grown rigid and twitched sharply from side to side, a sign in him of intense mental activity. Suddenly, he halted as though his mind were made up.
Comrades,
he said quietly,
do you know what it is responsible for this? Do you know what the enemy has come into the night and overthrown our windmill? Snowball!
He suddenly roared in a voice of thunder.
Snowball has done this in sheer malignity, thinking to set back our plans and avenge himself for his whatever that word is, expulsion. This traitor has crept here under the cover of the night and destroyed our word of nearly a year. Comrades, here and now I pronounce the death sentence upon the Snowball.
Animal Hero, second class. Wait a minute. Oh, he's still reading.
Animal Zero, second class, and half a bushel of apples to any animal who brings him to justice. A full bushel to anyone who captures him alive.
I love this voice.
Sleepy, you idiot!
That was Puddletown's idea.
Oh, yes.
The animals were shocked beyond measure to learn that even Snowball could be guilty of such an action. There was a cry of indignation, and everyone began thinking out ways of catching Snowball if he should ever come back. Almost immediately, the footprints of a pig were discovered in the grass at a little distance from the knoll. That grassy knoll. They could only be traced for a few yards, but appeared to lead to a hole in the hedge. Napoleon snuffed deeply at them and pronounced them to be snowballs. He gave it as his opinion that Snowball had probably come from the direction of Foxwood Farm.
No more delays, comrades,
cried Napoleon when the footprints had been examined.
There is work to be done. This very morning we begin rebuilding the mill, and we will build all through the winter, rain or shine. We will teach this miserable traitor that he cannot undo our work so easily. Remember, comrades, there must be no alliteration in our plans, alteration, whatever. They shall be carried out to the day. Forward, comrades. Long live Hogwarts. The windmill. Long live the animal farm. Where is Hermione? I need some stress release.
Miss
Wow.
Granger. Miss Granger.
Do you want me to continue on, or would you
Yes,
like
please.
to carry on? Oh, okay.
All right, Chapter 7. It was a bitter winter. The stormy weather was followed by sleet and snow, and then by a hard frost, which did not break till well into February. The animals carried on as best they could with the rebuilding of the windmill, well knowing that the outside world was watching them, and that the envious human beings would rejoice in triumph if the mill were not finished on time. Out of spite, The human beings pretended not to believe that it was Snowball who had destroyed the windmill. They said that it had fallen down because the walls were too thin. The animals knew that this was not the case. Still, it had been decided to build the walls 3 feet thick this time instead of 18 inches as before, which meant collecting much larger quantities of stone. For a long time, the quarry was full of snowdrifts, and nothing could be done. Some progress was made in the dry frost weather that followed, but it was cruel work, and the animals could not feel so hopeful about it as they had felt before. They were always cold, and usually hungry as well. Only Boxer and Clover never lost heart. Squealer made excellent speeches on the joy of service, and the good earth, and the dignity of labor, and the other animals found more inspiration in Boxer's strength, and never failing to cry of, "I work harder." Whatever. In January, food fell short. The corn ration was drastically reduced, and it was announced that an extra potato ration would be issued to make up for it. Then it was discovered that the greater part of the potato crop had been frosted in the clamps, which had not been covered thickly enough.
Aye, the praties.
I know.
Aye, the praties.
The potatoes had become soft and discolored, and only a few were edible. For days at a time, the animals had nothing to eat but chaff and mangles. Starvation seemed to stare them in the face.
And it was ugly.
Yeah.
Ugly.
Ugly.
All right. You can carry on,
take over for a
Shizzy.
bit?
Sure.
Well, it was vitally necessary to conceal this fact from the outside world, because emboldened by the collapse of that there windmill, the human beings, they was inventing new fresh lies about that there animal farm. Once again, it's being put about that all that their animals is dying of famine and diseases, and that they were continually fighting among themselves and had to resort to cannibalism and infanticide. In other words, they were eating the children. Don't be eating the children. Napoleon was well aware of them. Their bad results.
I need smack them, but you don't eat them. All right.
Don't eat the babies.
Napoleon was well aware of the bad results that.
Babies?
Eat the babies. You get the name and you take care of those babies.
Love the babies. Why not love the babies? The babies do nothing wrong to you.
Well, my baby back.
I want a speech on the goodness and quality of pork bellies.
Oh my gosh. It was decided to make use of Mr. Whymper to spread a contrary impression, or as we like to call it, misinformation. Hitherto, the animals had little or no contact with the Whymper on them their weekly visits now. However, a few of them their selected animals, mostly them sheeps, they was instructed to remark casually in this hearing that the rations had been increased. In addition, Napoleon ordered that almost empty bins in the store shed to be filled nearly to the brim with sand, which was then covered up with what remained of the grain and the meal. On some suitable pretext that Whymper was led through the store shed and allowed to catch a glimpse of the bins, he was deceived. Can you continue to report to the outside world, there ain't no food shortage on this here animal farm? Nonetheless, towards the end of that there January time, it became obvious, plainly obvious, that it would be necessary to procure some more grain from somewhere. Well, in them days, Napoleon rarely appeared in public, but spent all his time in the farmhouse, which was guarded at each door by one of them there first-looking dogs. When he did emerge, he was in ceremonial manner with an escort of 6 dogs who closely surrounded him and growled if anyone just came too near. Frequently, he did not even appear on Sunday mornings, but issued his orders through one of the other pigs. Usually it was Squealer. Well, one Sunday morning, Squealer announced it was them there hens who just come in to lay again must surrender their eggs. Bitches, give up them eggs. Napoleon had accepted. The Whymper, a contract of 400 eggs a week, the price of these would pay for enough grain and meal to keep the farm going till summer came on and conditions were easier. Now, when the hens heard this, they started a terrible outcry. Bitches be moaning. They had been warned earlier that the sacrifice might be necessary, but had not believed that would really happen. Yeah. I mean, come on, woman. Get to land. What you doing? Make me a sandwich. But did not believe that really happened. They were just getting their clutches ready for the spring sitting, and they protested that to take eggs away now is murder. For the first time since the expulsion of Jones, there was something that was resembling a rebellion, led by 3 young black Minicoran pullets. It's always them. The hens had determined effort to thwart Napoleon's wishes. So racist. Their method was to fly up in the rafters there and lay their eggs, which smashed to pieces on the floor. Well, Napoleon, he acted swiftly, and ruthlessly. He ordered the hens' rations to be stopped and decreed that any animal given so much as a grain of corn to a hen should be punished by death. The dogs saw to it that these orders were carried out, and for 5 days the hens held out. They capitulated and went back to their nesting boxes. 9 heads had died in the meantime. Their bodies were buried in the orchard after we picked their bones clean. It was given out that they had died of something dysentery. I can't pronounce. Dysentery. They died of dysenteries. Whymper heard nothing of this affair, and the eggs were duly delivered. Grocer's van driving up to the farm once a week, take them away. There goes our children, our future generations.
Our babies.
All this while no more had been seen of Snowball. He was rumored to be hiding on one of them there neighboring farms, either Foxwood or Pinchfield. Napoleon was by this time on slightly better terms with the other farmers than before. It happened that there was in the yard a pile of timber which had been stacked there 10 years earlier when a beech spinney was cleared and well seasoned, and Whymper had advised Napoleon to sell it. Well, both Mr. Plinkett and Mr. Frederick were anxious to buy it. Napoleon was hesitating between the two, unable to make up his mind. It was noticed that whatever he seemed on the point was to come to an agreement with Frederick. Snowball was declared to be hiding at Foxwood, while he inclined towards Plinkett. Snowball was said to be at Pinchfield. Suddenly, earlier in the spring, an alarming thing was discovered. Snowball was secretly frequenting the farm by night, trying to give him a little piece of ass. And the animals were so disturbed that they could hardly sleep in their stalls. Every night, it was said, he came creeping in under the cover of darkness. He performed all kinds of mischief. Well, he stole the corn, kicked over them there milk pails. He broke the eggs. He trampled the seed beds. He was even slapping the dogs in the booty. He gnawed the bark off the fruit trees. Whenever anything went wrong, it was because of Snowball. And if a window was broken or drain was blocked up, someone was certain to say it was Snowball. He'd come in the night and done it. He became the boogeyman. All you had to do is look in the mirror 3 times and they'd say Snowball 3 times. Look in the mirror, say Snowball 3 times, and he appears.
Baba Yaga.
And guess what? And then when that key to that store shed was lost, the whole farm was convinced that Snowball had thrown it down the well. Curiously enough, they went on believing this even after the mislaid key was found under a sack of meal. Cows declared unanimously that Snowball crept into their stalls and he milked them in their sleep. Oh, yeah. That's right. Get some of them cow titties.
Yeah. Come here, baby. I'm going to milk you. No, just lay still. Come on.
You hooked up with
my
Bill.
God.
Yeah,
Ew.
oh,
yeah.
I'm going to get a hold
Well,
of
them are rats. Now, those rats, they'd been troublesome that winter. They were also said to be in league with Snowball, those sons of bitches. Those rats, they were working for him, working for the man.
Hey, who you calling a rat? I ain't a rat.
You dirty rat.
What you
dirty rat.
Who you calling a rat?
You literally is a rat, dude.
I'm going to cut you.
No, don't make me nibble off your tail this time. Napoleon.
Hey, accidents happen. I'm just saying.
Well, just saying, so a tail here and ear there. What does it matter? Maybe we the ones taking the milk, as in payments.
Wake up with a horse head in your bed. Don't ask any questions. I'm just saying.
Just saying that there is a horse. He's been busting his ass for the past couple of years, and he's looking not too well over there.
Well, the one you got to happen to that horse is the chick that talks too much. Ribbons and shit.
Oh, she's gone. She's gone. Remember?
She might come back. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? She might come back.
She might come back, put
in a bad way.
You don't always say
Napoleon
you wake up
agreed
with a
that there
drunk of
should
a guy. You know what I'm saying?
Napoleon agreed that there should be a full investigation into Snowball's activities. With his dogs in attendance, he set out to make a careful tour of inspection of the farm buildings. The animals followed at a respectful distance. At every few steps, Napoleon stopped and snuffed the ground for traces of Snowball's footsteps, which he would say he could detect by the smell. He snuffed in every corner, in every barn, the cow shed, the hen houses, and the vegetable garden, and found traces of Snowball everywhere. Snowball's balls were everywhere. He would put his snout to the ground, give several deep sniffs, and say, "Balls, Snowballs have been here. I could smell him distinctly." Ugh. The word Snowball, all the dogs let out blood-curdling growls and showed their side teeth. Why had their side teeth? Why not their front teeth? The animals were thoroughly frightened. It seemed to them as though Snowball were some kind of invisible influence pervading the air about them, menacing them with all kinds of dangers. In the evening, Squealer called them together, and with an alarmed expression on his face, he told them that he had some serious news to report.
My name is Bill.
Comrades! A most terrible thing has been discovered. Snowball has sold himself to Frederick and Pinchfield Farm, who is even now plotting to attack us and take away our farm from us. Snowball is to act as this guide when the attack begins, but there's worse than that. We had thought that Snowball's rebellion was caused simply by his vanity and ambition, but we were wrong, comrades. Do you know what the real reason was? Snowball was in league with Jones from the very start. He was Jones's secret agent all the time. He has been provided by documents which are left behind him, which we have only just discovered. To my mind, this explains a great deal, comrades. Did we not see ourselves how he attempted, fortunately without success, to get us defeated and destroyed at the Battle of Cowshed?
The animals were stupefied. Did that mess you up?
That's the same voice of the animal or the attack dogs from Up.
It is. It is.
You like that? Well, the animals were stupefied. This was a wickedness far outdoing Snowball's destruction of the windmill, but it was some minutes before they could fully take it in. They all remembered her. Thought they remembered how they'd seen Snowball charging ahead of them at the Battle of Cowshed, how he had rallied and encouraged them at every turn, and how he had not paused for an instant, even when the pellet from Jones' gun had wounded his back. At first, it was a little difficult to see how this fitted in with being on Jones's side. Even Boxer, who seldom asked questions, was puzzled. He lay down, tucked his forehoofs beneath him, shut his eyes, and with a hard effort managed to formulate his thoughts. Then he said,
I do not.
Snowball fought bravely at the Battle of Cowshed. It was such a brave battle that he fought so hard and so long. I saw him myself. Did we not give him Animal Hero First Class immediately afterwards? That was our mistake, comrade, for we know now. It is all written down in the secret documents that we found. They were secret, and they were private, and they were for us. In that reality, he was trying to lure us to our doom. But he was wounded, said Boxer. We all saw him running with blood.
So much
was
blood.
just it was just flowing out of him freely.
It was a bloodbath.
So much
There's blood everywhere.
He
Lots of
stood
people
up for me.
say.
He stood up and said, "Fight, fight, fight," just like I did.
It's all part of the arrangement, cried Squealer. Jones' shot only grazed him. I could show you this in his own writing if you were able to read it. The plot was for Snowball at the critical moment to give the signal for flight and leave the field to the enemy. And he very much so succeeded. I will even say, comrades, he would have succeeded if it had not been for our heroic leader, Comrade Napoleon. Do you not remember now, just at the moment when Jones and his men got inside the yard, Snowball suddenly turned and fled like a little bitch, and many animals followed him. And do you not remember, too, that it was at this moment when panic was spreading, all seemed lost, that Comrade Napoleon sprang forward with a cry, "Death to humanity!" and sank his teeth into Jones's leg. Surely you remember that, comrades?
exclaimed Squealer, frisking from side to side. Now, when Squealer described the scene so graphically, it seemed to the animals that they did remember it. At any rate, they remembered that at the critical moment of the battle, Snowball had turned to flee. But Boxer was just a little uneasy. I do not believe that Snowball was a traitor at the beginning. What he's done since is different, so different. I believe at the Battle of the Cowshed, it was such a battle. It was a horrible battle. Only battle that could have been fought.
Huge.
He was a good comrade.
I do not believe that Snowball is a traitor at the beginning. Our leader, Comrade Napoleon, has stated categorically, comrade, I say, that Snowball was Jones's agent from the very beginning, yes, and from the long before rebellion was ever even thought of.
Wow, that's so different. If Comrade Napoleon says it, shit, must be right.
That is true, Spirit Comrade. I warn every animal on this farm to keep his eyes very wide open, for we have reason to think that some of Snowball's secret agents are lurking among us at this moment.
Bum, bum, bum.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Oof. I'll take a break for a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
4 days later, in the late afternoon, Napoleon ordered all the animals to assemble in the yard. When they were all gathered together, Napoleon emerged from the farmhouse wearing both his medals, for he had recently awarded himself Animal Hero First Class and Animal Hero Second Class, with his 9 huge dogs frisking round him and uttering growls that sent shivers down the animals' spines.
My name is Doug.
What?
Yeah, remember that? The dog from Up? My name is Doug. That's what I'm picturing, all these dogs.
Okay.
My name is Doug.
right.
Squirrel.
It was like a Christopher Walken comment just out of nowhere.
Oh my
I
God.
like
His name-
pineapple.
His name is Doug. I mean, how could you not see it? His name
Yeah.
is Doug.
Napoleon stood sternly surveying his audience. Then he uttered a high-pitched whimper. Immediately the dogs bounded forward, seized 4 of the pigs by the ear, and dragged them, squealing with pain and terror, to Napoleon's feet. The pigs' ears were quite delicious. I mean, they were bleeding. The dogs had tasted blood, and for a few moments they appeared to go quite mad. To the amazement of everybody, 3 of them flung themselves upon Boxer. Boxer saw them coming and put out his great hoof, caught a dog in midair, and pinned him to the ground. The dog shrieked for mercy, and then the other 2 fled with their tails between their legs. Boxer looked at Napoleon to know whether he should crush the dog to death or let it go. Napoleon appeared to change countenance and sharply ordered Boxer to let the dog go, whereat Boxer lifted his hoof and the dog slunk away, bruised and howling. Presently the tumult died down. The 4 pigs waited, trembling with guilt written on every line of their countenances. Napoleon now called upon them to confess their crimes. They were the same 4 pigs that had protested when Napoleon abolished the Sunday meetings. Without any further prompting, they confessed they had been secretly in touch with Snowball ever since his expulsion, and that they had collaborated with him in destroying the windmill, and that they had entered into a secret agreement with him to hand over Animal Farm to Mr. Frederick. They added that Snowball had privately admitted to them that he had been Jones's secret agent for years past. When they had finished their confession, the dogs promptly tore their throats out. In a terrible voice, Napoleon demanded whether any other animal had anything to confess.
Bacon's back on the menu, boys.
Damn right. It's going to be dinner tonight. But they say they weren't supposed to eat the flesh of any other
I
animals.
thought they weren't.
But I guess the dogs, that's okay.
Yeah, for the dogs, it's fine. You
Yeah.
know?
They're not animals.
They're not animals. Yeah.
They're dogs.
The 3 hens who had been the ringleaders in the attempted rebellion over the eggs now came forward and stated that Snowball had appeared to them in a dream and incited them to disobey Napoleon's orders. They too were slaughtered. Then a goose came forward and confessed to having secreted 6 ears of corn during last year's harvest and eaten them in the night. Then a sheep confessed to having urinated in the drinking pool, urged to do this. So she said,
I wonder why it turned red.
I was wondering why it tasted so funny. Tasted like asparagus or something.
Ew.
No.
Urged to do this, she said, by Snowball. And 2 other sheep confessed to having murdered an old ram, an especially devoted follower of Napoleon, by chasing him round and round a bonfire when he was suffering from a cough. They were all slain on the spot. And so the tale of confessions and executions went on until there was a pile of corpses laying before Napoleon's feet, and the air was heavy with the smell of blood, which had been unknown there since the expulsion of Jones.
We call it the culling.
That's one way to save on food.
The culling.
When it was all over, the remaining animals, except for the pigs and dogs, crept away in a body. Oh, I see. Yes, they were shaken and miserable. They did not know which was more shocking: the treachery of the animals who had leagued themselves with Snowball, or the cruel retribution they had just witnessed. In the old days, there had often been scenes of bloodshed equally terrible, but it seemed all to them this was far worse now that it was happening amongst themselves. Since Jones had left the farm until today, no animal had killed another animal. Not even a rat had been killed. They had made their way to the little knoll where the half-finished windmill stood, and with one accord they all lay down as though huddling together for warmth. Clover, Muriel, Benjamin, the cows, the sheep, and the whole flock of geese and hens, everyone indeed except for the cat, of course, who had suddenly disappeared just before Napoleon ordered the animals to assemble.
Peace.
I'm out.
Bye, bitches. For some time, nobody spoke. Only Boxer remained on his feet. He fidgeted to and fro, swishing his long black tail against his sides and occasionally uttering a little whinny of surprise. Finally, he said,
Well, I do not understand it. I would not have believed such things could happen on this farm. It must have been due to some fault in ourselves. The solution, as I see it, is to work harder. From now on, I'm going to get up a full hour earlier in the mornings. Who in the hell would do that?
Jeez. He's just a glutton for punishment.
He is. And he moved off at his lumbering trot and made for the quarry. Having got there, he collected 2 successive loads of stone and dragged them down to the windmill before retiring for the night. The animals huddled about Clover, not speaking. The knoll where they were lying gave them a wide prospect across the countryside. Most of Animal Farm was within their view. The long pasture stretching down to the main road, the hayfield, the spinney, the drinking pool, the plowed fields, the drinking pool, where the goat, where
that pool no more.
where the sheep peed in it.
I like that tang.
R. Kelly.
I don't like a sheep dead on the water. It turns
Haters wanna hate.
Open
Lovers
your eyes.
wanna
Makes you feel
love. I
alive.
don't even want none of the above. I wanna piss on you. Yes, I do wanna piss on you. I wanna pee on you.
Don't eat the yellow snow.
I don't have to be stuck in a desert to do it. I'd do it just for the hell of it.
I'd rather drink turpentine and piss on a brush fire.
Doc, it burns when I pee.
Why does it burn when I pee?
That's still not funny.
Stop peeing. Stop burning.
It's hilarious.
It's not. It was a clear spring evening. The grass and the bursting hedges were gilded by the level rays of the sun. Never had the farm, and with a kind of surprise, they remembered that it was their own farm. Every inch of it their own property. Appeared to the animals so desirable a place. As Clover looked down the hillside, her eyes filled with tears. If she could have spoken her thoughts, it would have been to say that this was not what they had aimed at when they set themselves years ago to work for the overthrow of the human race. These scenes of terror and slaughter were not what they had looked forward to on that night when old Major had first stirred them up to a rebellion. If she herself had any picture of the future, it had been of a society of animals set free from hunger and from the whip, all equal, each working according to his capacity, the strong protecting the weak, as she had protected the lost brood of ducklings with her foreleg on the night of Major's death. Speech. Death. Speech.
Same thing. Same thing.
Same thing. He died not too long after.
Instead, she did not know why, they had come to a time when no one dared speak his mind, when fierce, growling dogs roamed everywhere, and when you had to watch your comrades torn to pieces after confessing to shocking crimes. There was no thought of rebellion or disobedience in her mind. She knew that even as things were, they were far better off than they had been in the days of Jones.
Except for the pee in the water.
Except for the pee in the water. And that, before all else, it was needful to prevent the return of any of the human beings. Whatever happened, she would remain faithful, work hard, carry out the orders that were given to her, and accept the leadership of Napoleon. But still, it was not for this that she and all the other animals had hoped and toiled. It was not for this that they had built the windmill and faced the bullets of Jones's gun. Such were her thoughts, though she lacked the words to express them. At last, feeling this to be in some way a substitute for the words she was unable to find, she began to sing Beasts of England. The other animals sitting round her took it up, and they sang it 3 times over, very tunefully, but slowly and mournfully, in a way they had never sung it before. They had just finished singing it for the 3rd time when Squealer, attended by 2 dogs, approached them with the air of having something important to say. He announced that, by a special decree of Comrade Napoleon, Beasts of England had been abolished. From now onwards, it was forbidden to sing it.
What the hell hippie crap is this?
What are you doing? Taking away my song.
The animals were taken aback. Oh, but why? Cried Muriel. It is no longer needed, comrade, said Squealer stiffly. Beasts of England was the song of the rebellion, but the rebellion is now completed. The execution of the traitors this afternoon was the final act. The enemy, both external and internal, has been defeated. In Beasts of England, we expressed our longing for a better society in days to come. But that society has now been established. Clearly, this song has no longer any purpose. Frightened though they were, some of the animals might possibly have protested, but at this moment, the sheep set up their usual bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which went on for several minutes and put an end to the discussion. So, Beasts of England was heard no more. In its place, Minimus, the poet, the tiny pig with little bacon, had composed other song, which began,
Oh, please let me do it.
please sing this.
Oh boy, here we go.
Amazon. Amazon. Never through shall come to her. Oh, Amazon. Amazon. Never through me shall come to her.
And this was sung every Sunday morning after the hoisting of the flag. But somehow, neither the words nor the tune ever seemed to the animals to come up to the beasts of England.
Touchdown. Paper? Unbreaded.
Stop it. Get some help.
Perfect.
I love it. I love it.
Oh.
Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, I feel it's time for us to come together. Come together as a congregation. We're going to read from chapter 8 this here tonight. Yes, we are.
Ooh, Nelly.
That's so much.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that was the sign of the devil right there.
No, it's not come. Multiple times.
I'm so close, bro.
I'm so close, bro. That was so good.
God.
A few days later. I said a few days later.
Oh, yeah.
When the terror caused by the executions had died down, some of the animals had remembered, or thought they remembered, that the sixth commandment decreed, no animal shall kill any other animal. No, sir! And though no one cared to mention it in the hearings of the pigs or the dogs, it was felt that the killings which had taken place did not square with this. No, sir! Clover asked Benjamin to read the sixth commandment, and when Benjamin, as usual, said that he refused to meddle in such matters, she fetched Muriel. Muriel read the commandment for her. It ran,
No animals shall kill any other animal without us.
somehow or another, the last two words had slipped out of the animal's memory. But they saw now that the commandment had not been violated. No, it had not. But clearly there was good reason for the killing of the traitors and who had leagued themselves with the abominable Snowball.
Measles
Old fat
murder.
poker that he was. Throughout the year, the animals have worked even harder than they had worked in the previous year. Yes, they did. They had to rebuild the windmill. They had to make the walls twice as thick as before. They had to finish it by the appointed date. Together with the regular work of the farm, it was a tremendous labor. A tremendous sacrifice. Yes, it was.
Sacrifice.
There were times when it seemed to the animals that they had worked longer hours and fed no better than they had during the time of Jones's day. On Sunday morning, Squealer, holding down a long strip of paper with his trotter, would read to them lists of figures proving that the production of every class of foodstuff had increased by 200%. 200%!
200. Oh, they were so on it.
300%, or even
can I hear a 4?
500%.
500%.
That's a labor of love.
As the case might be, the animals saw no reason to disbelieve him, especially as they could no longer remember very clearly what conditions had been like before the rebellion. Of course, starvation plays a big part in that.
Oh, yes.
All the same, there were days when they felt like they would sooner have less figures and more food.
Oh, don't give me the figures. Give me the food. Sounds
Food.
weird.
They're asking for the food. They're out there starving. They're starving for the word is what they are.
And they wasted all that bacon.
All that bacon. All that bacon went to waste.
All that ribs. Bacon.
Ribs, pork shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
Butt.
Pork.
Nice juicy butt. You just
Nice
press
juicy
it with
butts.
your hands. Oh,
Nice.
I got off topic. Yes, I did. All orders were now issued through Squealer or one of the other pigs. Napoleon himself had not been seen in public as often as once in a fortnight. When he did appear, he was attended not only by his dogs, but by a black cockerel who marched in front of him and acted like his trumpeter, letting out a loud cock-a-doodle-doo. Yes, he did.
I said you do. How do you do, cock-a-doodle-doo?
Before Napoleon spoke, even in the farmhouse, it was said Napoleon inhabited several separate apartments from the others. He took his meals alone with the two dogs to wait for him and always ate from the Crown Derby dinner service, which had been in the glass cupboard in the drawing room.
Damn.
It was announced that when that the gun would be fired every year on Napoleon's birthday, as well as the two other anniversaries. Yes, it did. We got to celebrate that birthday, children.
Get that birthday. Get that birthday jizz.
Napoleon was now never spoken of simply as Napoleon. He was always referred to in the formal style. Our leader, Comrade Napoleon. Yes, he was. And the pigs like to invent for him such titles as Father of all animals, Terror of mankind,
That's right.
Protector of the sheepfold, the duckling's friend.
Yes.
And all sorts of other atrocities and the like. In his speeches, Squealer would talk with the tears rolling down his big old fat pig cheeks of Napoleon's wisdom, the goodness of his heart, the deep love he bore to all animals everywhere, how he was having the meat sweats, even and especially the unhappy animals who still lived in ignorance and slavery on the other farms. Yes, they did.
Gotta save them.
It became usual to give Napoleon the credit for every successful achievement and every stroke of good fortune. Yes, it be. Praise be Napoleon.
Stroke that good fortune.
You would often hear one hen remark to another, under the guidance of our leader, Comrade Napoleon, I laid 5 eggs in 6 days. That's 5 eggs in 6 days, children.
Damn. That's hard
Push
work.
out them tackleberries.
Or 2 cows enjoying a drink at the pool would exclaim, what in the hell's in this water? It tastes like sheep piss. Oh, I'm sorry. What they would say is, thanks to the leadership of Comrade Napoleon, how excellent this water tastes.
Uh-oh.
It tastes like sheep piss.
Got a new song coming up.
The general feeling on the farm was well expressed in a poem entitled Comrade Napoleon, which was composed by Minimus, who had really small hands, and which ran as follows. Give me a second.
Take a swallow. Take a deep breath.
This will not be done in song form. Friend of the fatherless, fountain of happiness, Lord of the swill bucket, oh, how my soul is on fire when I gaze at thee. Come and command the air, like the sun in the sky, Comrade Napoleon. Thou art the giver of all that thy creatures love. Full belly twice a day, clean straw to roll upon. Every beast, great or small, sleeps at peace in his stall. Thou watchest over all, Comrade Napoleon had a suckling pig, ere he had grown as big, even as a pipe bottle or a rolling pin. He should have learned to be faithful and true to thee. Yes, his first week shall be.
Oh, Hercules.
Yes.
Hercules.
Oh, my baby.
Napoleon approved of this poem, and it caused to be inscribed on the wall of the big barn. Yes, it did, at the opposite end from the 7 Commandments. It was surmounted by a portrait of Napoleon in profile, a very fat profile, executed by Squealer in white paint. Yes, it was.
Why was Squealer wearing white paint? And why was he drawing pictures?
Well, he did some of that body painting art. You know what I'm saying?
He thought it was
I'm
booger
just
sugar.
Squealer
And he
thought
got
it was booger sugar. He noticed he didn't feel as high as he did before. Meanwhile, through the agency of Wimper, Napoleon was engaged in complicated negotiations with Frederick and Pilkington. The pile of timber was still unsold. Of the two, Frederick was the more anxious to get a hold of it. Yes, he wanted to get a hold of that wood. Yes, he did. But he would not offer a reasonable price. At the same time,
give me more money. You want to touch my wood?
That's right. At the same time, there were renewed rumors that Frederick and his men were plotting to attack Animal Farm and destroy the windmill yet again. The building of which had aroused furious jealousy in him. Snowball was known to still be skulking around Pinchfield Farm. In the middle of the summer, the animals were alarmed to hear that the 3 hens had come forward and confessed that, inspired by Snowball, they had entered into a plot to murder Napoleon. Yes, they did. They wanted to take him out. Yes, they did, children. They were executed immediately. Fresh precautions for Napoleon's safety were taken. 4 dogs guarded his bed at night, like 4 guardian angels. Yes, they were. One at each corner, and a young pig named Pink Eye. Might want to stay away from that one now. He was given the task of tasting all the food before he ate it, lest he should be poisoned.
Well,
I think worrying about poison be the last thing I'd be worried about with old Pink Eye. At about the same time it was given out that Napoleon had arranged to sell the pile of timber to Mr. Pilkington because he really wanted that wood. He was also going to enter into a regular agreement for the exchange of certain products between Animal Farm and Foxwood. The relations through Napoleon and Pilkington, though they were conducted through Wimper, were now almost friendly. The animals distrusted Pilkington as a human being, but greatly preferred him to Frederick, whom they had both feared and hated. They both feared and hated. I'm going to say it one more time. They feared him and they hated him. As the summer wore on and the windmill near completion, the rumors of an impending treacherous attack grew stronger and stronger. Frederick, it was said, intended to bring them against 20 men, all armed with guns. And he had already bribed the magistrates and the police so that if he could once get a hold of the title deeds to Animal Farm, there would be no questions. No, sir.
None.
Moreover, terrible stories were leaking out from the Pitchfield about the cruelties that Frederick practiced upon his animals. Oh, it was so cruel. It was so vicious. He had flogged the old horse to death. He starved the cows. He killed the dog by throwing it into the furnace. He amused himself in the evenings by making the cocks fight. The cocks were fighting, y'all.
Why are the cocks fighting?
Oh, just a tip.
They had splinters of razor blades tied to their spurs so they can really tear them cocks up.
The animals fighting over there.
The animals' blood boiled with rage when they heard of these things being done to their comrades, and sometimes they clamored to be allowed to go out in a body and attack Pinchfield Farm, drive out the humans, and set them animals free. But Squealer counseled them to avoid rash actions and to trust. You got to trust in it. You got to believe in it. You got to know the word of Comrade Napoleon strategy. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Amen.
Wait.
Okay. I got to take a break.
You gotta take a break.
All right.
You ready, Kaiser?
Alrighty, here we go. Okay, so.
Oh, one of my favorite accents. I love that one. Yeah.
Actually, I was not going to go with that one.
That's too bad. That's my favorite.
I guess we're going to have to do that one now, dear. Okay.
I love the Midwestern.
I was going to do Comrade Sergey, but of course, you know what? Let's go with his little known dear cousin up in the north there. Okay. Okay. So, nevertheless, feelings against Frederick continue to run high, about as high as that one time that Tim Wilson down in the corner, got after that Packer game. I tell you what, it was a sight to behold. One Sunday morning, Napoleon appeared at the barn and explained that he'd never at any time contemplated selling the pile of timber to Frederick. He considered it beneath his dignity. He said he'd have dealings with the scoundrels of that deception. Okay. And the pigeons who were still sent out and to spread tidings of the rebellion, were forbidden to set foot anywhere on Faxwood. And, were ordered to drop their formal slogan along with their dukers, the death to humanity in favor of death to Frederick. Oh, yeah. In, the late summer, yet another of Snowball's machinations was laid bare. Oh, that's a big word. The wheat crop was full of weeds, and it was discovered that one of his nocturnal visits, Snowball, had mixed weed seeds with the seed corn there. Oh, what a nasty pig there. I say we need to make some ham hocks out of that guy, Okay, so Gander would been privy to a plot and confessed his guilt to Squealer. He immediately committed sewer slide by swallowing deadly nightshade berries. Oh, that's a hell of a way to go, The animals now also learned that Snowball had never, as many of them were, believed hitherto, don't you know, received the order of Animal Hero First Class. Oh, what you know. That's something there. I know a guy down the road once, sorry, I'm getting off track again. Anywho, so this was merely a legend which had been spread sometime after the Battle of Cowshed by Snowball himself. So far from being decorated, he'd been censured for showing cowardice in battle. Once again, some of the animals heard this with a certain bewilderment, but that Squealer was so unable to convince them that their memories had been at fault. I totally understand it. The wife is always getting on my case about forgetting stuff. Last week I forgot this thing and I don't remember what it was, but she made such a big stink about it. No, never mind. I'm getting off track again. Sorry about that there, folks. Anywho, in the autumn, by a tremendous exhausting effort for the harvest, had to be gathered at almost the same time. The windmill was finished. Oh, by golly there, that's a good thing. We're finally ready to get that thing going. The machinery is still to be installed. Oh, whoopsie daisy. And Whimper had negotiated the purchase of it, but the structure was completed in the teeth of every difficulty in spite of inexperience of private implements. Bad luck of Snowball's treachery to work had been finished punctually to the very day. Tired but proud, the animals walked around and around their masterpiece, and which appeared to be more beautiful in their eyes than when it had been built the first time. Moreover, the walls were thick before, or twice as thick before. Okay. Nothing short of explosives was gonna lay them low this time. Yeah, buddy. Let's say we're doing things extra good this time. Get them up twice as thick because don't want them hosers just knocking them over. Okay, so nothing. It's already I read that one already. And when they thought of how they had labored, what discouragements they'd overcome, and the enormous difference that would be made of their lives when the sails were turning, the dynamo was running, when they thought of all this, their tiredness forsook them, and they gambled round and round the windmill, uttering cries of triumph. Boy, there's a lot of big words in that sentence there. Okay. Yeah, I never saw it gambled with an O before. I mean, it's kind of something we often sound like we say it up here, but we don't get much riverboats on this side of on this side of the lake. Anywho, Napoleon himself, attended by his dogs and his cockerel, came down to inspect the completed work. Partially congratulated the animals on their achievement and announced that the mill would be named Napoleon Mill. Oh, yep, just that there. Oh, yeah, that fat assy there is not just gonna go ahead and take credit for everything.
God, Kaiser, not you two.
What?
Not you two.
This was special
With the Midwestern voice.
I requested this voice.
Oh, dear Lord.
She wants it. She wants it. It just excites her so much.
Oh, well, it just kind of gets the motor running there. It's just one of them voices. It's like
tater tot casserole.
What I say there, my wife makes a mean green bean casserole. What I done married her for.
Oh, God. That make you throw up your toenails and drive Satan away.
Y'all just don't know what good old Midwestern cooking is.
Well, if it has vegetables in it, it's probably not good. So
let's say that exactly. Corn pudding,
I don't eat what my food eats.
Well, we have bratwurst too, but that's usually during the Packer game. Well, I'm sorry.
The football game or the one in your room?
During a Packers game.
Oh, football. Oh,
that kind of football.
Yeah.
The following has been closed captioned for the reality impaired. Mm-hmm. All right. So anyway, hey, just continuing on there because we're just gonna get this thing read. So 2 days later, the animals were called together for a special meeting at the barn. Yeah, they were struck dumb with surprise when Napoleon announced that he sold a pile of timber to Frederick. Oh, wow, that's a twist. Oh, tomorrow Frederick's wagons would arrive and begin carting it away. Throughout the whole period of seeing this seeming friendship with Pilkington, Napoleon had been in secret agreement with Frederick, that dastardly ham. Yeah, so all relations with Foxwood have been broken off. Oh, that's a shame there. So insulting messages have been sent to Pilkington, and the pigeons have been told to avoid Pinchfield Farm and alter their slogan from death to Frederick to death to Pilkington. At the same time, Napoleon assured the animals that the stories of an impending attack on Animal Farm were completely untrue, and that the tales about Frederick's cruelty of his own animals have been greatly exaggerated. Oh, sounds kind of like, what was that thing we used to have back in the day? Oh, the bomb shelters and the red stuff and the, sounds a lot like that back whenever I was knee-high to a grasshopper there. So, anywho, all these rumors had probably originated with Snowball and his agents. You know, he's just a dastardly old ham. It now appeared that Snowball was not, after all, hiding in Pinchville Farm, and in fact, had never been there in his life. Yeah, he was living in considerable luxury, so it was said, Foxwood, and had been, in reality, been a pensioner of Pilkington for the past. Oh, wow, that's quite the twist there. So the pigs were in ecstasies over Napoleon's cunning by seeming to be friendly with Pilkington and forced Frederick to raise the price by 12 pounds. Yeah, but the superior quality of Napoleon's mind, said Squealer, was shown in the fact that he trusted nobody, not even Frederick. Frederick had wanted to pay the timber with something called a check. I never seen check spelled that way before, but what do I know? Which seemed to be a piece of paper with a promise to pay written upon it. You know, it's got about like that IOU I got from Jack, D down the road. Anywho, so Napoleon was too clever for him. Yeah, I tell you what though, that guy, that Jimmy guy, he did some muffler work for me once, and I never really ran right after that. And sorry, I'm getting sidetracked again. And so anyway, he had demanded payment of 5 pound notes, which had been handed over before the timber was removed. Already Frederick had paid up, and the sum what he paid was just enough to buy the machinery for the windmill, Okay. I'm just gonna go a little bit further here, huh? Just get down just about halfway, and we'll just call that a night there for at least for this guy, So anyway, meanwhile, the timber was being carted away at high speed, and when it was all gone, another special meeting was held in the barn for the animals to inspect Frederick's banknotes. Smiling beatifically, they was wearing both his decorations. Napoleon reposed on a bed of straw on the platform with the money at his side, neatly piled on a china dish from the farmhouse kitchen. The animals filed slowly past, and each gazed his fill, and Boxer put out his nose to sniff the banknotes, and the flimsy white thing stirred and rustled with his breath. So then 3 days later, there was a terrible hullabaloo. Whimper, his face deadly pale, came racing up the path on his bicycle, flung it on the yard, and rushed straight to the farmhouse. The next moment, a choking roar of rage sounded from Napoleon's apartments. The news of what had happened spread around the farm like wildfire. The banknotes was forgeries.
Forgeries.
That dastardly bastard there. Oh, so Frederick had got timber for nothing. Well, he got all that wood for nothing there. Wow,
that's how my wife gets that wood for nothing too.
Okay, I'm going to call it a day on this one.
That's true.
I couldn't laugh because I was eating chips, and that was hilarious.
All I hear is, "Oh, that was so funny, ha ha." Sorry,
it's funny because it's true.
Yes,
I'm just glad that I could bring some joy to some hearts there.
That's so good, guys.
Is he going to take an hour to say bye?
Oh, well, I could do that, but I don't want to sit here like my grandma Mildred and keep y'all away from here, especially with the snow coming down. We got some rain in the forecast this next week, although it's been unseasonably warm this year.
Oh my God.
This Indian summer we're having, God damn, I tell you what. I've been able to get out and get my Christmas lights up already because it's been like 60 friggin' degrees, yo. I tell you what, I've never seen it like this in all my years, and it's been fantastic to get all these chores done around the house and winterizing done before the snow even comes down from the north. And it's great for backyard grilling, especially this time of the year with the Packers going to the, doing the games and all that. It's been a great time. So anyway, I don't want to keep you here for too long, but next time you're down there at the store, I did talk to Marjorie, and Well,
here's how you do it, like that, just like that. Just say no.
Oh, thank God.
I was just going to start reading. I was getting ready to cut in right before you did that.
I completely improved all of that. I'm really proud of myself.
I know, it's so good. I love it. Oh Lordy.
All right. Napoleon called the animals together immediately and in a terrible voice pronounced the death sentence upon Frederick. When captured, he said Frederick should be boiled alive. At the same time,
Damn,
dude. He's like Henry VIII. At the same time, he warned them after this treacherous deed, the worst was to be expected.
I told you.
Frederick and his men might make their long-expected attack at any moment. Sentinels were placed at all the approaches to the farm. In addition, 4 pigeons were sent to Foxwood with a conciliatory message, which it was hoped might reestablish good relations with Pilkington. The very next morning, the attack came. The animals were at breakfast when the lookouts came racing in with the news that Frederick and his followers had already come through the 5-barred gate. Boldly enough, the animals sallied forth to meet them. They sallied forth. But this time, they did not have the easy victory that they had had in the Battle of the Cowshed. There were 15 men, with half a dozen guns between them, and they opened fire as soon as they got within 50 yards. The animals could not face the terrible explosions and the stinging pellets, and in spite of the efforts of Napoleon and Boxer to rally them, they were soon driven back. A number of them were already wounded. They took refuge in the farm buildings and peeped out cautiously from the chinks and knotholes. The whole of the big pasture, including the windmill. I know where you're going. The windmill.
No, just go ahead and just, go over that.
It was in the hands of the enemy. For the moment, even Napoleon seemed at loss. He paced up and down without a word, his tail rigid and twitching. Wistful glances were sent in the direction of Foxwood. If Pilkington and his men would help them, the day might yet be won. But at this moment, the 4 pigeons, who had been sent out on the day before, returned, one of them bearing a scrap of paper from Pilkington. On it was penciled the words, "Serves you right." Meanwhile, Frederick and his men had halted about the windmill. The animals watched them, and a murmur of dismay went around. 2 of the men had produced a crowbar and a sledgehammer. They were going to knock the windmill down.
"Impossible," cried Napoleon. "We have built the walls far too thick for that. They could not knock it down in a week. Courage, comrades."
But Benjamin was watching the movements of the men intently. The 2 with the hammer and crowbar were drilling a hole near the base of the windmill, slowly, and with an air of almost amusement. Benjamin nodded his long muscle, whatever, his fucking nose.
Uh-oh.
It's getting testy.
I thought so, he said. Do you not see what they are doing? In another moment, they are going to blast powder into the hole.
Terrified, the animals waited. It was impossible now to venture out of the shelter of the buildings. After a few minutes, the men were seen to be running in all directions. Then there was a deafening roar. The pigeons, swirling into the air, and all the animals, except Napoleon, flung themselves flat on their bellies and hid their faces. When they got up again, a huge cloud of black smoke was hanging where the windmill had been. Slowly, the breeze drifted it away. The windmill had ceased to exist.
Like a Michael Bay movie.
I know.
At this
It was done in slow motion.
Yeah.
A big boom. It was so loud. It took everything out. It was glorious.
At this sight, the animals' courage returned to them. The fear and despair they had felt a moment earlier were drowned in their rage against this vile, contemptible act. A mighty cry for vengeance went up, and without waiting for further orders, they charged forth in a body and made straight for the enemy. This time, they did not heed cruel pellets that swept over them like hail. It was a savage, bitter battle. The men fired again and again, and when the animals got to close quarters, lashed out with their sticks and their heavy boots. A cow, 3 sheep, and 2 geese were killed, and nearly everyone was wounded. Even Napoleon, who was directing operations from the rear, as a backdoor pirate, had the tip of his tail chipped by a pellet. But the men did not go unscathed either. 3 of them had their heads broken by blows from Boxer's hooves. Another was gored in the belly by a cow's horn. Another had his trousers nearly torn off by Jesse and Blue Ball. And when the
I like your pronunciation better.
I got blue balls. Get them pants off. Bluebell. Come on, get me some. My blue balls are hurting. And when the 9 dogs of Napoleon's own bodyguard, whom he had instructed to make a detour under the cover of the hedge, suddenly appeared on the men's flanks, baying ferociously, panic overtook them. They saw that they were in danger of being surrounded. Frederick shouted to his men to get out while the going was good. In the next moment, the cowardly enemy was running for dear life. The animals chased them right down to the bottom of the field and got into some last kicks at them as they forced their way through the thorn hedge. They had won, but they were weary and bleeding. Slowly, they began to limp back towards the farm. The sight of their dead comrades stretched upon the grass moved some of them to tears, and for a little while they halted in sorrowful silence at the place where the windmill had once stood. Yes, it was gone. Almost the last trace of their labor was gone. Even the foundations were partially destroyed, and in rebuilding it, they could not this time, as before, make use of the fallen stones. This time the stones had vanished too. The force of the explosion had flung them to distances of hundreds of yards. It was as though the windmill had never been. You want me to keep going, Shizzy, or do you want to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
As they approached the farm, Squealer, who had unaccountably been absent during the fight, came skipping toward them, whisking his tail and beaming with satisfaction. And the animals heard, from the direction of the farm buildings, the solemn booming of a gun. "What is that gun firing for?" said Boxer. "Oh,
To celebrate our victory,"
cried Squealer. "What victory?" said Boxer. His knees were bleeding. He had lost a shoe and split his hoof and torn his pantyhose and broke a nail, and a dozen pellets had lodged themselves in his ass. Oh, no, his hind leg. Oh, okay, I thought it was just going to be his ass.
What victory, comrade! We have driven the enemy from our soil, the sacred soil of Animal Farm.
But they destroyed the windmill, and we have worked on it for years.
What matter? We will build another windmill. We will build 6 windmills. We feel like it. What? Okay, whatever. You do not appreciate, comrade, the mighty thing we have done. The enemy was in occupation of this very ground, and we now stand upon. And now, thanks to the leadership of Comrade Napoleon, we have won every inch of it back again.
Then we have won back. And what? Wait a minute, what? Then we have won back what we had before, said Boxer.
That is our victory,
said Squealer. They limped into the yard. The pellets under the skin of Boxer's legs smarted painfully. He saw ahead of him the heavy labor of rebuilding the windmill from the foundations, and already in imagination he braced himself for the task. But for the first time it occurred to him that he was 11 years old, and perhaps his great muscles were not quite what they had once been. But when the animal saw the green
flag flying, and it heard the gun firing again, 7 times it was fired in all. And he heard the speech that Napoleon made, congratulating them on their conduct. It did seem to them that after that they had won a great victory. The animals slain in the battle were given a solemn funeral, and their bones were
your robot.
feasted
You're
upon.
choppy on
You're
purpose.
very robot-y. Very
you're
robot-y.
choppy as hell.
Robot-y?
Yes.
Yeah.
Choppy as hell.
Yeah.
All right, give me just a second. I think I know what the problem is. This is going to.
We are experiencing
disappear for
technical
just a second.
difficulties. Please stand. Bye.
Give me just a second. I'll be right back.
He sounds like he's going like 2 times speed.
It was
How
like he
can
was
you do
trying.
that?
Yeah, like he was. It almost sounded like a Shatner impression a little bit. there.
Almost, yeah.
Mr. Spock, I don't know what is going on. Why is there a trouble in my coffee?
The trouble with tribbles.
Did that clear it up?
Yes.
Much better.
Yes. You're much better now.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Told you quit playing with them buttons, man.
For
I
real.
was touching them buttons. They felt so good. Oh, so good.
Make them wiggle.
The animals slain in the battle were given a solemn funeral. As their bones were feasted upon later on that evening, Boxer and Clover pulled the wagon which served as a hearse, and Napoleon himself walked at the head of the procession. 2 whole days were given over to celebrations. There were songs, speeches, and more firings of the gun, and a special gift of an apple was bestowed upon every animal. With 2 ounces of corn for each bird and 3 biscuits for each dog, it was announced that the battle would be called the Battle of the Windmill, and that Napoleon had created a new decoration, the Order of the Green Banner, which he had conferred upon himself. In the general rejoicing, the unfortunate affair of the banknotes was forgotten. It was a few days later that the pigs came upon a case of whiskey in the cellars of the farmhouse. It had been overlooked at the time when the house was first occupied. That night there came from the farmhouse the sound of loud singing, in which, to everyone's surprise, strains of the Beasts of England were mixed up. About 9:30, Napoleon, wearing an old bowler hat of Mr. Jones, was distinctly seen to emerge from the back door, gallop rapidly around the yard, and disappeared indoors again. But in the morning, deep silence hung over the farmhouse. Not a pig appeared to be stirring. It was nearly 9 o'clock when Skeeler made his appearance. He was walking slowly and dejectedly. His eyes were dull, his tail hanging limply behind him, and his butt was bleeding, and with every appearance of being seriously ill. He called the animals together and told them that he had terrible news to impart. Comrade Napoleon was dying. A cry of lamentation went up. Straw was laid outside the doors of the farmhouse, and the animals walked on tiptoe. With little tears in their eyes, they asked one another what they should do if their dear leader was taken away from them. A rumor went round that Snowball had, after all, contrived to induce poison into Napoleon's food. At the 11th o'clock hour, Squealer came out to make another announcement. It was as his last act upon earth. Comrade Napoleon had pronounced a solemn decree. The Draken of alcohol was to be punished by death.
I'm going to one of them slave farms then.
Yeehaw.
By the evening, however, Napoleon appeared to be somewhat better, and the following morning, Squealer was able to tell them he was well on his way to recovery. By that evening of that day, Napoleon was back at work and on the next day, it was learned that he'd instructed Whymper to purchase a Willingdon and some booklets on brewing and distilling. A week later, Napoleon gave orders that the small paddock beyond the orchard, which had previously been intended to set aside for grazing ground for animals who went to work at past work, who were past work, was to be plowed up. It was given out that the pasture was exhausted, needed reseeding, but it soon became known that Napoleon intended to sow it with barley. About this time, there occurred a strange incident which hardly anyone was able to understand. One night at about 12 o'clock, there was a loud crash in the yard, and the animals rushed out of their stalls. It was a moonlit night. At the foot of the end of the wall of the big barn where the 7 commandments were written, there lay a ladder broken in 2 pieces. Squealer, Temporarily stunned, was sprawled beside it. Near a hand, there lay a lantern, a paintbrush, and an overturned pot of white paint. As he snorted it off the ground, we realized that it wasn't white paint after all. The dogs immediately, they made a ring around Squealer. And they escorted him back to the farmhouse as soon as he was able to walk. None of the animals could form any idea as to what this meant, except old Benjamin, who nodded his muzzle with a knowing air and seemed to understand it. But you know what? He wasn't going to say shit. A few days later, Muriel read over the 7 commandments to herself, noticed that there was yet another of them which animals had remembered wrong. They had thought that the 5th commandment was no animal shall drink alcohol, but there were 2 words that they had forgotten. Actually, the commandment read no animal shall drink alcohol to excess.
Oh, okay, that's better.
Yeah. Don't drink it. Don't drink too much of it, Tarzan.
Right.
Chapter 9. Boxer's split hoof was a long time in healing. They'd started the rebuilding of the windmill the day after the victory celebrations were ended. Boxer refused to take even a day off work. He made a point of honor not to let it be seen that he was in pain. In the evenings, he would admit privately to Clover that the hoof troubled him a great deal. Clover treated the hoof with poultices and herbs, which she prepared by chewing them, spitting on them, and just vomiting on his foot. Both she and Benjamin urged Boxer, you shouldn't work so much. A horse's legs do not last forever, she said to him, but Boxer would not listen. He said, only one real ambition left, to see the windmill well underway before he reached the age of retirement, which is coming up really soon. At the beginning, when the lawns of Animal Farm were first formulated, the retiring age had been fixed for horses and pigs at 12, for cows at 14, for dogs at 9, for sheep at 7, and for hens and geese at 5. Liberal old age pensions had been agreed upon. As yet, no animal had actually retired on pension, but of late the subject had been discussed more and more. But it's much easier just to put them down. Now that a small field beyond the orchard had been set aside for barley, it was rumored that a corner of the large pasture was to be fenced off and turned into grazing ground for superannuated animals. For a horse, it was said, the pension would be 5 pounds of corn a day, and in winter 15 pounds of hay, with a carrot or possibly an apple on public holidays. Boxer's 12th birthday was due in the late summer of that following year. Meanwhile, life was hard. The winter was cold, as the last one had been. The food was even shorter. Once again, all rations were reduced except those of the pigs and the dogs. Too rigid equality in rations, Squealer explained, would have been contrary to the principles of animalism. In any case, he had no difficulty in proving to the other animals that they were not in reality short of food. Whatever the appearances might be, it's not what you think it is. For the time being, certainly it had been found necessary to make a readjustment of rations. Squealer always spoke of it as a readjustment, never as a reduction. But in comparison with the days of Jones, the improvements was enormous. Reading out the figures in a shrill, rapid voice, he provided to them in detail that they had more oats, more hay, more turnips than they had in Jones's day, and they worked shorter hours, that their drinking water was of better quality minus the piss, and they lived longer, that a larger proportion of their lives, the young ones survived infancy, except for the ones that we killed off, and that they had more straw in their stalls and suffered less from fleas. The animals believed every word of it. Truth to tell, Jones and all he stood for had almost faded out of their memories. They knew that life nowadays was harsh and bare, that they were often hungry and often cold, and that they were usually working when they were not asleep. But doubtless it had been worse in the old days. They were glad to believe so. Besides, in those days, they had been slaves, and now they're free, and that made all the differences Squealer did not fail to point out. There were many more mouths to feed now. In the autumn, the 4 sows had all littered about simultaneously, producing 31 young little pigs between them. Lots of bacon. The young pigs were piebald, as Napoleon was the only boar on the farm, it was possible to guess who was their parent. It was announced later that when bricks and timber had been purchased, a schoolroom would be built on the farmhouse garden. For the time being, the young pigs were given their instructions by Napoleon himself in the farmhouse kitchen. They took their exercise in the garden, were discouraged from playing with the other young animals because they're dirty beasts. About this time, too, it was laid down as a rule that when a pig and any other animal met on the path, the other animal must stand aside, and also that all pigs of whatever degree were to have privilege of wearing green ribbons on their tails on Sundays. The farm had a fairly successful year, but it was still short of money. There were the bricks and the sand and the lime for the schoolroom to be purchased, and it would also be necessary to begin saving up again for the machinery for the windmill. Then there were the lamp oils and the candles for the house, sugar for Napoleon's old table. He forbade this to the other pigs on the ground that it made them fat, and all the unusual replacements such as tools, nails, string, coal, wire, scrap iron, dog biscuits, a stump of hay, and a part of potato crop were sold off. And the contract for eggs was increased to 600 a week. So that year, the hens barely hatched enough chicks to keep their numbers at the same level. Rations reduced in December, reduced again in February, and lanterns in the stalls were forbidden to save oil. But the pigs seemed comfortable enough. In fact, were putting on weight. If anything, one afternoon, late February, a rich, warm, appetizing scent such as the animals never smelt before it wafted across the yard from the little brew house which had been disused in Joseph's time and which stood beyond the kitchen. Someone had said it was the smell of cooking barley. The animals sniffed the air hungrily, but no warm mash appeared, and on the following Sunday it was announced that from now onwards all barley would be reserved for the pigs. The field beyond the orchard had already been sown with barley, and the news soon leaked out that every pig was now receiving a ration of a pint of beer daily, with half a gallon for Napoleon himself, which was always served to him with the Crown Derby soup tureen. But if there were hardships to be borne, they were partly offset by the fact that life nowadays had a greater dignity than it had before. There were more songs, more speeches, more processions. Napoleon had commanded that once a week there should be something held called a spontaneous demonstration, where we would hang the young ones from their feet and beat them about the head and shoulders with a sharp object. The object of which was to celebrate the struggles and the triumphs of the animal farm. At that appointed time, the animals would leave their work, march around the precincts of the farm in military formation with the pigs leading, then the horses, then the cows, then the sheep, then the poultry. The dogs flanked the procession, and at the head of all marched Napoleon's black cock. Boxer and Clover always carried between them the green banner marked with the hoof and the horn and the caption, "Long live Comrade Napoleon." Afterwards, recitations of poems composed in Napoleon's honor and a speech by Squealer giving particulars of the latest increases in the production of foodstuffs, and on occasion, a shot was fired from the gun. The sheep were the greatest devotees of the spontaneous demonstration, and if anyone complained, as a few animals sometimes did when no pigs or dogs were near, that they wasted time and meant a lot of standing about in the cold, the sheep were sure to silence them with a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. But by and large, the animals enjoyed these celebrations. They found it comforting to be reminded that, after all, they were truly their own masters, and that the work they did was for their own benefit, so that with the songs, the processions, Squealer's lists of figures, the thunder of the gun, the crowing of the cock, the fluttering of the flag, they were able to forget that their bellies were empty, at least part of the time. You want to take over, Deepa?
Sure. In April, Animal Farm was proclaimed a republic, and it became necessary to elect a president. There, of course, was only one candidate, Napoleon, who was elected unanimously. On the same day, it was given out that the fresh documents had been discovered which revealed further details about Snowball's complicity with Jones. It now appeared that Snowball had not, as the animals had previously imagined, merely attempted to lose the battle of the cowshed by means of a stratagem, but had been openly fighting on Jones's side. In fact, it was he who actually had been the leader of the human forces, and had charged into battle with the words, "Long live humanity," on his lips. The wounds on Snowball's back, which a few of the animals still remembered to have seen, had been inflicted by Napoleon's teeth. In the middle of the summer, Moses the raven suddenly reappeared on the farm, after an absence of several years. He was quite unchanged, still did no work, and talked with the same strain as ever about Sugar Candy Mountain. He would perch on a stump, flap his black wings, and talk by the hour to anyone who would listen. "Up there, comrades," he would say solemnly, pointing to the sky with his large beak. "Up there, just on the other side of that dark cloud that you can see, there it lies, Sugar Candy Mountain, that happy country where we poor animals shall rest forever from our labors." He even claimed to have been there on his higher flights, and to have seen the everlasting fields of clover, and the linseed cake, and the lump sugar growing on the hedges. Many of the animals believed him. Their lives now, they reasoned, were hungry and laborious. Was it not right and just that a better world should exist somewhere else? A thing that was difficult to determine was the attitude of the pigs towards Moses. They declared contemptuously that his stories about Sugar Candy Mountain were lies, and yet they allowed him to remain on the farm, not working, with an allowance of a gill of beer a day. After his hoof had healed up, Boxer worked harder than ever. Indeed, all the animals worked like slaves that year. Apart from the regular work of the farm and the rebuilding of the windmill, there were hours on insufficient food were hard to bear. But Boxer never faltered. In nothing that he said or did was there any sign that his strength was not what it had been. It was only his appearance that was a little altered. His hide was less shiny than it had used to be, and his great haunches seemed to have shrunken. The others said, "Boxer, will you pick up when the spring grass comes on?" But the spring came, and Boxer grew no fatter. Sometimes on the slope leading to the top of the quarry, when he braced his muscles against the weight of some vast boulder, it seemed that nothing kept him on his feet except for the will to continue. At such times his lips were seen to form the words, "I will work harder." He had no voice left. Once again Clover and Benjamin warned him to take care of his health, but Boxer paid no attention. His 12th birthday was approaching. He did not care what happened so long as a good store of stone was accumulated before he went on pension. Late one evening in the summer, a sudden rumor ran round the farm that something had happened to Boxer. He had gone out alone to drag a load of stone to the windmill, and sure enough, the rumor was true. A few minutes later, 2 pigeons came racing up with the news. "Boxer is fallen. He's lying on his side and he can't get up." About half the animals on the farm rushed out to the knoll where the windmill stood. There lay Boxer, between the shafts of the cart, his neck stretched out, unable to raise his head. His eyes were glazed, his sides matted with sweat. A thin stream of blood had trickled out his mouth. Clover dropped to her knees at his side. "Boxer," she cried, "how are you?" "Well, it's my lung," said Boxer in a weak voice. "It does not matter. I think you will be able to finish the windmill without me. There's a pretty good store of stone accumulated. I had only another month to go in any case. To tell you the truth, I had been looking forward to my retirement. And perhaps, as Benjamin is growing old too, they will let him retire at the same time and be a companion to me." "Well, we must get help at once," said Clover. "Run, somebody tell Squealer what's happened." All the other animals immediately raced back to the farmhouse to give Squealer the news. Only Clover remained, and Benjamin, who lay down at Boxer's side and, without speaking, kept the flies off of him with his long tail. After about a quarter of an hour, Squealer appeared, full of sympathy and concern. He said that Comrade Napoleon had learned, with the very deepest distress, of this misfortune, to one of the most loyal workers on the farm, and was ready to make arrangements to send Boxer to be treated in the hospital at Willington. The animals felt a little uneasy about this. Except for Molly and Snowball, no other animal had ever left the farm, and they did not like to think of their sick comrade on the hands of human beings. However, Squealer easily convinced them that the veterinary surgeon in Willington could treat Boxer's case more satisfactorily than could be done on the farm. And about a half an hour later, when Boxer had somewhat recovered, he was with difficulty got onto his feet and managed to limp back to his stall, where Clover and Benjamin had prepared a good bed of straw for him. For the next 2 days, Boxer remained in his stall. The pigs had sent out a large bottle of pink medicine, which they had found in the medicine chest in the bathroom, and Clover administered it to Boxer twice a day after meals. In the evening, she lay in his stall and talked to him, while Benjamin had kept the flies off of him. Boxer professed not to be sorry for what had happened. If he made a good recovery, he might expect to live another 3 years, and he looked forward to the peaceful days that he would spend in the corner of the big pasture. It would be for the first time he had had leisure to study and improve his mind. He intended, he said, to devote the rest of his life learning the remaining 22 letters of the alphabet. However, Benjamin and Clover could only be with Boxer after working hours, and it was in the middle of the day when the van came to take him away. The animals were all at work weeding turnips under the supervision of a pig when they were astonished to see Benjamin come galloping from the direction of the farm buildings, braying at the top of his voice. It was the first time they had ever seen Benjamin excited. Indeed, it was the first time that anyone had ever seen him gallop. "Quick, quick," he shouted. "Come at once. They're taking Boxer away." Without waiting for orders from the pig, the animals broke off work and raced back to the farm buildings. Sure enough, there in the yard was a large closed van, drawn by 2 horses, with lettering on the side and a sly-looking man in a low-crowned bowler hat sitting in the driver's seat, and Boxer's stall was empty. The animals crowded round the van. "Goodbye, Boxer," they chorused. "Bye." "Fools! Fools!" shouted Benjamin, prancing round them and stamping the earth with his small hoofs. "Fools! Don't you see what's written on the side of the van?" The animals gave pause, and there was a hush. Muriel began to spell out the words, but Benjamin pushed her aside. In the midst of a deadly silence, he read, "Alfred Simmons, horse slaughterer and glue boiler, Willington, dealer in hides and bone meal, kennels supplied." Do you not understand what that means? They're taking Boxer to the knackers.
To the knackers.
To the knackers.
To the knackers.
To the knackers. Poor Boxer.
It's getting late. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have to end this bad boy here shortly. Is there anything you've got for these folks?
No.
I still got stuff to do.
I took my shower and everything. I'm ready for the day tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'm ready for the day tomorrow.
Right for the day.
You're right on there.
Is it bad that I'm looking forward to going to work so I can have a break?
No, I totally get that.
Yeah,
I do totally get that. Everybody have a wonderful evening. We will see you on the flip side with another wonderful morning edition and private celebration. That's how it goes. We have those every so often. Peace.
schooner.
Make sure